about Beijing opera is that it's very multi-dimensional, and that so that they not only there's the singing aspect, but also that there's the movement, the dance, and it blurs the boundaries between the acting, singing, the martial arts movements, and then the fact they have to interact with a music ensemble. And then the stage is very simple too. Actually, there's in that book, Peking Opera, The World According to Meilhan Fong, which is on China New World Press. There's a number of essays and discussions by, let's see, Meilhan Fong, Stanislavski, Brecht. It was around the issue of the fourth wall. Is that right? I'm just trying to remember, but in theater, in which case it didn't really exist in Beijing opera. The fourth wall had to do with the relationship between the audience and what was being performed on stage. Any other?
Is the train important in Chinese folk music as it is, of course, in American jazz and American blues? Train, locomotives, train.
Trains.
Train, yeah, trains.
Legitimate question.
Well, that's a good question, because when I thought about this, how trains symbolized freedom for African Americans, and there's of course the Underground Railroad, which in fact I read I think it was in today's paper about what is it, that slave trade area that's in somewhere, was it Mayville or something, that they're trying to
Maysville.
Okay. They're trying to reclaim that and put it in a museum someplace else. But anyway, I know for Chinese Americans, we were our contribution to this country was building the railroad. And when I was doing the Woman Warrior, the Chinese nationals who were acting, they also talked about building the railroad, and there were work songs. And so I mean, I've always had a long time interest in actually Chinese work songs, and specifically about the trains. But the thing is, well, with African Americans, there were like porters, that they worked as porters, but I don't think Chinese, I think they just built the railroads. I don't think they could be on the trains. So I'm not sure if that was a trick. Plus also, it was also, I think, expression, was tied to Christianity, African American Christianity, which, by the way, our perspective about Paul Robeson was that I think during the centennial celebration of his life, a lot of times the left just kind of looked at sort of his whatever relationship he had to communism, but when I read his book Here I Stand, which was written in 1958 after the 10 years of persecution, I mean, he always made reference to the Bible. He came from a long, I mean, he traces his history back to the African Mount Zion Episcopal Church. When there was criticism about, well, I guess the Soviet Union supporting third world nations in in their struggle for freedom, he just said, know them by their deeds. He made the reference by the Bible. So it wasn't that he was supporting communism. He was just saying, well, the Soviet Union was supporting these into baseball. And I remember all my baseball mitts and baseball bats, the Louisville Slugger.
All right. A friend of mine's dad worked there, as a matter of fact. Well, John, you're on the road so much. You're going here, you're going there. I'm wondering, do you mind sharing with us perhaps a story or two from some of your travels, your gypsy-like life, bringing kind of like the Johnny Appleseed of music, bringing the heart and soul of your culture to the other cultures. Is there anything that comes to mind in your?
There's a number of experiences. Like when I was in Verona, Italy, in 1990, and I was performing at the Verona Jazz Festival with an ensemble called the Pan Asian Orchestra, and it was an ensemble made up mainly of Asian American musicians, and it was like a large jazz ensemble with taiko, Japanese drums. And anyway, at the end of the concert, we performed a work called the Butterfly Lover Song. And it's based on this famous story. Long before Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet, there was a story about two star-crossed lovers, and they had to separate because of the arranged marriage customs in China. And so one dies of a broken heart, the other lover walks miles and miles to the gravesite. She leaps into the gravesite, and they reincarnate as butterflies.
Oh, right.
And when I told the story, and we performed the music in Verona, Italy, that's the place where they have the Romeo and Juliet balcony. The Italians just loved it. I mean, it resonated that they could share a similar experience of that story. And I was really moved by it. And we performed at the Castle Vecchia, and it was, I mean, I'm kind of a romantic, and so it was like the Italian presenters wanted us to perform like at, I don't know, it was 3 or 4 o'clock, and I looked at what's it, an almanac? What's that book they use to determine when the sun hits?
Almanac?
That they wanted the sun to hit or cast a shadow at the castle at a certain spot. I mean, they had this whole look that they wanted to capture the moment. And then when James Newton performed on the flute, which sometimes it would sound like flute songs, and the birds started conversing in dialogue with the flute. So it was just really an unforgettable moment. And then...
You mean just spontaneously then?
Yeah, I mean, well, it was part of the piece. He started performing, I think he had a solo flute cadenza, just by himself, you know, and sometimes the sounds would be like flute, well, like bird songs or bird calls, and it would sound like that, and the birds started to respond to that. So somewhere there's some, I have to try to recapture the footage, but that was one memorable moment. And then when I was in South Africa, well, let me backtrack. When I was in Beijing in 1994, I heard some Beijing opera music, and it was just amazing because it was so multi-dimensional, because it has dance, it has song, poetry, and it's so simple. The staging is simple, but the costumes and the percussion instruments with the singing was just, it was just amazing. And so then I met these musicians, and they brought me into their homes, and the home was older than the age of this country. I mean, it's amazing. But it was, I mean, it was clean, and they fed me, and they had a small table, and it just was an experience where I just felt, I mean, they invited me into their homes, and I learned about a great deal about this music. I mean, it's you know, China is just such an old civilization, and Beijing opera and Chinese opera is just so deep. And then a month later, I had traveled to South Africa, and this was 4.5 months after the elections to end apartheid. So this was a period of celebration and euphoria, and when I got off the plane, there was, I believe there was some music from Senegal, and it was a free outdoor concert, and the people in Johannesburg, both the black South Africans and the white South Africans, and then the other colored people from South Africa were in Jubilee.